second segment of this interesting session, Digital Inclusion, Models for an Inclusive Internet. Valeria, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Claudia, con todas y todos.
Thank you, Claudia.
Antes de arrancar con el segundo segmento de la sesión, vamos a
Before
dar
resuming
un
with the
espacio
second
para
segment,
atender
we
algunas
will
preguntas
have
que se plantearon desde la
time
audiencia
for
para los
questions.
panelistas del primer segmento de la
The
sesión. Para
participants
esto,
have asked questions,
cuento con el
and
apoyo de
I
Israel
count
de ISO,
on the
quien ha
support of
estado
Israel
receptando
Rosas from
sus
ISAC, who has
preguntas, y
been
a quien voy a dar a este momento
receiving
la
the
palabra para
questions and who
que
will
nos
now
las
take the
plantee, para que las
floor
canalice hacia el panel. Así que Israel, por favor,
for the Q&A
coméntanos qué
session.
inquietudes y
Israel,
preguntas hay desde la
let
audiencia.
us know what are the questions that we received. Thank you, Valeria. Well, some were already answered in the Q&A window. I'm going to read out the remaining questions. Juana Paris, is it all right that we all view internet as a place full of opportunities, because it is like that, but we always have to think about safe internet, and particularly for the most vulnerable people, such as girls, boys, and adolescents. What are we doing in that sense as a region? Are we just focused on delivering tablets, laptops, and connectivity to all zones and territories, and then we understand that we don't fully understand the risk? We don't understand how the internet works and what are the things we have to take into account. Should be better thinking more about that and not more and more connectivity.
Okay, gracias, Israel. Va dirigida la pregunta
Thank you, Israel.
a cualquier integrante
This
del panel.
question is addressed to any member of the panel.
Bueno,
it's not addressed to any person. So I'd like to invite the panel to answer. Please let me know who wishes to respond to answer this question. Valeria, I can answer the question. All right. Well, this is a very valuable question. That is why when I started my presentation, I said that digital inclusion is something that should be tackled from different viewpoints. We cannot only respond from one standpoint. There are many standpoints that have to be taken into account, and particularly maybe we don't have the people who can answer this type of issues, which are more soft skills and things that have to do with information for users. But we should bear in mind that these things are viewed from a globality. All the things that we mentioned contribute to approach that objective. When we speak about the technical community, it's not only about access, but also about improving the quality and also providing access that really enables all these opportunities and possibilities. So that is a very relevant and important task. When we speak about regulations, that is also very important. And I'm sure that all these programs that go at the basis of issues and take the technology to the different communities, many of these, in addition to delivering technology, work on the soft skills. Particularly in Haiti, we had a project that concluded last year and was done together with IDRC, with the Canadian Cooperation Agency. And there are many, many projects that deal with this. Projects that work with gender. We took technology to a very specific community. And during these training activities that we carried out, we first spoke about how the internet worked, and also about the possibilities they had at hand with that technology. In addition to that, and Carolina will be speaking about this project tomorrow and on digital work. So which are the social skills required, soft skills required to use these technologies in order to work online in a place such as Haiti? We had 150 women beneficiaries, and this, I think, responds to your point. In the second part of the panel, I'm sure they will be speaking about other specific projects that really focus on digital inclusion. Thank you, Laura. Israel, are there more questions? Yes, there are two questions that I would like to bring together, because this has to do with specific cases of countries. Robert Munoz from Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia says the following. A few days ago in Bolivia, we launched a new fiber optic network in order to improve connectivity at a lower cost. This will launch at 1 Bolivian pesos. Now, what is your opinion regarding this situation? And then from Venezuela, Ivan writes, Venezuela is a dramatic case for the region. Many other countries have received or rejected our migrants, but very little is said about the digital migrants towards offline life. Many users still do not have access. Infrastructure has been crumbling down as a result of lack of investment and vandalism of the networks. So the supply, the offer in the country has migrated from unlimited to almost all the private operators, unlimited only in US dollars, starting $40 a month for 2 megabytes per second. But the context is that the majority of people earn $1.5 a month, with a bonus of a private company, maybe $6 a month. So the rates for mobile services also demand several services in order to pay for them. And the public ISP and CNTV announced that the rates will now reach more than 4 megabytes in broadband at $3 a month. I'm not
Bien,
speaking
gracias
about
Israel.
censorship or
Uno de
blocking
los integrantes
from
del
the
panel
state, but what
quisiera
do you propose
responder
from other
estas
countries in this
inquietudes.
regard? So who'd like to answer this question?
Es posible también responder por escrito, hacer el uso de la
You can also
funcionalidad de
answer
Q&A
in
en el caso
writing
que quieran
using the
ofrecer un poco más de
Q&A
detalles por
option
escrito.
if you wish to provide more details.
Adriana, por favor, gracias por tomar las preguntas.
I would like to answer that question. Thank you, Adriana. Regarding the announcement of the new fiber optic network in Bolivia, this is very good news. The more mobile services, new generation mobile services wish to be set up, more fiber optic is required in the world, also in rural areas. This network apparently is a truncal network, not a last mile network, but in the sense that this brings fiber optic closer to more remote communities. This then lowers the cost of connectivity. Now, what is very important to highlight in the projects, whether fiber optic wireless networks or commercial or state services, is sustainability. All projects have to analyze, do a sustainability analysis so that we don't come across what has happened in Latin America. The state provides final services which at costs that are not sustainable. So this is then a step backwards in remote communities that were connected either by satellite or whatever technology, but they cannot continue paying for this. So if they have to disconnect, imagine this is a step backwards in human rights. These are models of which these services provided by the government have not been sustainable. So it is better to enable several private and social or community stakeholders or cooperatives to get connected, but to provide services at affordable prices to truncal networks. So we need to invest in fiber optics in the sense that this will lower the price of accessing this traffic. These last mile networks. So hopefully these will be sustainable projects and also to prevent
Muchas gracias,
situations such as
Adriana.
what happened in Peru. Thank you,
Tenemos varias
Adriana.
preguntas más, pero en virtud del tiempo vamos a
We have several
pedir
questions,
a
but
los miembros del
because
panel
of
que
the
a
shortage of
través
time, we're going to ask
del
the
mecanismo
members
y de
of
la
the
ventana
panel
de preguntas y respuestas las
to
atiendan, de modo que podamos dar curso a la
look
segunda parte
at
de la
the
sesión,
Q&A
porque venimos ya
sessions
un poco
later.
atrasados
So
y
we are
todavía nos
going
queda
to
una
skip
sesión
that.
temática más.
We
Así que
we are
Israel les
rather
va a estar
late and we
canalizando las
still
preguntas para que
have one
puedan ser
session. So
respondidas por
Israel
escrito
is
en el chat.
forwarding the
Y
questions
bueno,
so
y
that the
damos curso
speakers may
entonces a
answer
la
them in
segunda
writing
parte
in
de la
the
sesión
chat.
y
So
vamos
now we'll
directamente al
start
grano.
with the second
Este
part of the session.
segmento apunta a
We'll
presentar
this
ejemplos,
segment
iniciativas, casos muy
is meant to
específicos
give
que han logrado
examples,
contribuir a la inclusión
initiatives, very
digital.
specific
Y
cases
la
that
pregunta
contributed
que
to
nuestro
digital
panel, que es
inclusion.
otro panel
And
de
the
lujo
question
también,
that our panel has, this
es
wonderful panel,
desde un punto de vista
is
práctico. ¿Qué
from the
soluciones se han
practical
adoptado en
point of
las
view,
áreas
what
técnicas y
solutions have been
tecnológicas, en las
adopted in
áreas
the technical and
regulatorias y de
technological and
política
regulatory
pública
areas,
y de
public
desarrollo de
policy,
capacidades de
and
actores sociales?
capacity building and social
Quisiera primero
improvement?
invitar a Lilian Chamorro,
First,
líder de
I'd
proyectos
like
de
to
Colnodo, para que nos
call
cuente sobre las
Lilian
experiencias de redes
Chamorro of
comunitarias que, como
Colnodo,
sabemos, ofrecen
who will
una
tell us
vía
about
para que
the experience of
comunidades
the
remotas, actualmente
community network,
desatendidas,
so that
puedan
the
organizarse para
remote
desarrollar soluciones
communities
locales que les permitan
currently
acceder a
neglected
las tecnologías y a
may
los espacios
make it
digitales.
possible for
Varias de las
us
experiencias
to
paradigmáticas están en Colombia. Lilian, nos gustaría mucho
make
escucharte al respecto. Así
Lilian,
que
so
adelante,
Lilian
bienvenida.
Chamorro of Colnodo, Colombia, you have the floor. Hello, Valeria. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel. It is absolutely relevant. The previous talk was about most importance when you discuss the topics that need to be improved to enable connectivity and therefore to the inclusion, to the digital inclusion of the communities. As Valeria pointed out, we're going to speak of some community network processes that are being implemented in Colombia, thinking of them as processes that go hand in hand, that are implemented hand in hand with the communities, because those are the roots of these processes. The communities are key, a key element, and Adriana and Alan and already some of the previous speakers touched upon it. It's recognizing the communities as active players when trying to reduce the digital divide. That is, the rural communities and the territories should no longer be seen as a passive players, but the social organizations and the government should see them as agents of change in their territories, and they are absolutely necessary for the connectivity and digital inclusion to be sustainable in time. So one of the experiences I'd like to tell you about is this community network in Mani, in Casanare, a municipality in the eastern plains of Colombia. There's a group of people, a group of neighbors in a rural area that got together to provide connectivity in a place where it was not available. And there was no coverage of any providers, only satellite for internet access, and it was quite expensive for many people in those places. So they decided to get together to implement their community network, and from Colnodo, we supported this with Frida, who in 2018 contributed so that we could implement this community network. Today, there are 11 households, one rural school connected in El Viso, more than 100 users that connect the internet to a fiber optic 120 megas link and a broadband. And it's a rather small network. They have simple organization and financial. They just get together and they establish agreements talking about the network. They invite all the neighbors to get involved. And in the pandemic, this experience has been very interesting because the people that got together have continued to work both in the maintenance of the network and installing new nodes for the network. From Colnodo, we have just accompanied them remotely to meet all the demands, but it's been the community that has continued to maintain the services, and that has been very useful for people to work from home, teleeducation and telework. We have found cases where children from places that have no access to the network um, could connect, and in many cases that surprised us, seeing how they have seen the advantage of having got organized and implementing this community network in this area of the country. The next case that I want to mention is this one, Red Huella Casil. It's the wind network. These are two municipalities in Colombia where three indigenous communities and a peasants community and former combatants that live in this territory also decided to get organized with the support of the program of UNPD and implementing the peace agreements and with the support of Colnodo, these communities decided to put together an alliance, a partnership of connectivity players, and through this partnership to sustain their community communications networks. We are using Wi-Fi links to connect these 5 communities that are scattered in these 2 municipalities, and some mesh networks have been connected with a free router. This is a process that started this year. Last year, we were planning it, and fortunately, before the pandemic, we had an opportunity to be in the on the field and to teach and to have the first equipment. And when the pandemic started, the community took over the leadership of their community. They managed they have fiber optic, and they have worked in the links of the transportation networks and the local connections in each of the communities. And they hired a dedicated fiber optic in one of the headers, 50 megas. And with these 50 megas, we're connecting about 50 households, and and 100 individual users and 7 organizations, and we see what the progress has been working on the organization, on the financial issues, so that the community may continue to sustain this service. We are accompanying them, and the people are getting trained, making the most of all the opportunities from the Internet Society, etc. And retail, and trying to have the communities make the most of each space to continue to improve their network. And the last experience I wanted to show you is the Red Ink. Is Buenos Aires, Cauca. This is a process that we have worked with. We have worked with the society in since 2017. In 2019, we signed an agreement with the Ministry of Telecommunications in Colombia, which enabled us to implement a mobile GSM network with 3 basic stations connecting 3 different points of the territory that enables people to send text messages and calls. It has 95 users with a 900 megahertz frequency, and that we also received the support of a number of partners, including ISOC and APC. So once again, I want to highlight that the importance of acknowledging the communities, acknowledging them as active agents to reduce the digital divide, moving away from the concept the government or the private sector as the sole agents that can provide this sort of solutions. We should understand that we are an ecosystem, and Alan very properly said that we should have talks, a multi-stakeholder conversation, and Adriana mentioned the same when she talked about the regulatory frameworks, opening spaces to test, to try, to experiment at a regulatory level, how the communities can play that active role. They're already they already have an active role, but we need to regulate it. How can we regulate in a flexible way to facilitate progress in these the communities, because there we have a range of technologies. It could be a Wi-Fi network, a GSM, or an RTE. If the communities have access to these for the networks using open source hardware and software developed across the world, we can implement them. And it's very important to consider the participation of different players, and the processes would not have been possible without the assistance and the cooperation of organizations and international funds. But we also need national funds. We need universal support. We need the government to support in a range of ways. And the basic thing is the community commitment, engaging all the different
Muchas
players.
gracias, Lilian.
Thank
Sin
you.
duda, sortear la brecha
Thank you,
digital
Lilian.
pasará por
There's
el
no
reforzamiento
doubt that to
del
reduce
derecho de las
the
comunidades a
digital
autodeterminarse
divide,
de
we
manera a
need
conectarse
to
a las
improve the right
tecnologías y a
of
los
the
espacios
communities
digitales.
to
Bueno, ahora en México, en
connect and
Chihuahua,
develop
el
their
estado
own
más grande
digital
del
networks.
país,
In
tiene
Mexico,
un porcentaje
Chihuahua, the largest
importantísimo de la
state
población
in the country,
dispersa
there's
a
a
lo
very
largo de la Sierra
significant,
Tarahumara.
the
Y el
people are
gobierno del estado
scattered
ha
through
puesto
the
en marcha
Omara
políticas públicas,
sierras,
estrategias y
and the
planes
government has
orientados a conectar a la
implemented
población,
plans and
haciendo un trabajo
strategic
coordinado con
policies to
comunidades y
connect
con
the
organizaciones que
population,
trabajan
coordinating
en distintos
work with
ámbitos,
the
incluyendo en
communities
el
and
ámbito de las
organizations
redes
involved in
comunitarias.
a
Está con
range of
nosotros
fields,
Gustavo Ríos
including the
Alcázar, él es
communities.
coordinador de
Gustavo
política
Ríos
digital del
Alcázar is
gobierno
with
de
us. He is
Chihuahua,
the coordinator
para
of the
contarnos
digital
sobre las
policy of the
soluciones que se han
Chihuahua
desplegado
government.
desde el
He'll
sector
tell us
público
about
para
the
atender
solutions
esta
deployed
problemática.
at a public level to
Gustavo,
solve this
bienvenido.
problem.
Tienes la palabra.
Gustavo, you have the floor. Good afternoon, everybody. And good afternoon to those of you who are still in the morning. Thank you for this space. I'd like to tell you what we are doing at state, at our local government. And let me give you a couple of data so that you may see the size of Chihuahua is the largest state in the country with over 247,000 square kilometers. 44% of the territory is covered by mountains and mountain ranges, and a very scattered population. Of the 3.5 million people, more than 3 million, 73% of the population is in just 2 municipalities, and of the 67 remaining districts, we have the rest of the population. In the over 12,000 locations, 57% have less than 1,000 inhabitants. So these characteristics make it very difficult, make it non-profitable. It's complex to make their investment sustainable. So aware of that, the government of the state decided to expand and to modernize the telecommunications infrastructure to create a transportation network, to expand the coverage, to facilitate the deployment, and to bring services to all the regions in the state.
This is a hyperconverging connectivity program. This is a project that optimizes the current infrastructure, it modernizes existing technology and enables new technology and infrastructure in regions where we were not present. The state government has 39 communication sites, and building 22 new ones, they will be building a trunk that will cover and increase 49% of the current coverage of the state network. The capacity in terms of the speed will increase from 2 megabit links to 720 megabits per second links. This is a 36,000% increase. The 59 nodes in ideal conditions will be able to connect links that are up to 35 kilometers away. This will provide connectivity to a large part of the territory of Chihuahua. The government services today only occupy a limited amount of this capacity. The 94% will be able to be addressed to each node and so generate local and community operators, and also to enable more public services with free access to the internet, for example, in hospitals, museums, in public spaces, indigenous communities, and also common spaces where connection to the internet can become a reality. It is quite clear for us that in order to reach the last mile, we first need to solve the access to a trunk route. Improving connectivity, the state infrastructure will become the best highway for the information. Once this has been integrated, the coverage and the capacity of this trunk will then encourage operators to invest in the region. This project will also generate a strong reduction in costs for the state administration. In addition to that, it will provide long-term viability of these services. I'd also like to highlight that this project has also been strengthened through strategic partnerships, such as the state government with the Network for Promoting Stability and Equality. This has provided input that goes beyond the technical input. So the interaction with the local communities, stakeholders, and strategic players, we now work on a model that can lead to creating sustainable networks from the economic, social, and political standpoints. So the investment done by the state, the government of the state, to improve and modernize the telecommunications infrastructure is very meaningful from the social standpoint. Services will then reach the different regions of Chihuahua. There is still a lot of work to be done, but in Chihuahua, from the standpoint of the common good and with a hyper-converging connectivity plan, we are putting our technological platform at the service of the citizens.
Muchísimas gracias, Gustavo. Sin duda un
Thank you
ejemplo muy
very much,
interesante
Gustavo.
de
That is a
colaboración
very
multisectorial
interesting
para atender este problema que
example
compete a
of
todos realmente.
multi-stakeholder collaboration.
Bueno, y la colaboración justamente entre
And
múltiples
precisely,
partes interesadas no es
multi-stakeholder
fácil de llevar a la
collaboration
práctica,
is
pero
not
al mismo
easy to
tiempo
put into
en la
practice.
región se ha avanzado
But at the same time,
significativamente
in
en
the
su
region,
cristalización en
significant
torno a
progress has been
iniciativas
made in
de
this
inclusión
regard.
digital y otras. Por
For
ejemplo,
example,
este
through
foro al que
digital
asistimos al
inclusion
momento es otra
initiatives or the
de las
forum
ilustraciones de la puesta en práctica del enfoque de trabajo
regarding
multiparticipativo.
the
Tenemos a Ignacio
multi-participatory
Estrada, gerente general de
work.
LACTLD, para comentarnos
The next
sobre
speaker,
iniciativas que
Miguel
congregan
Ignacio
a los
Estrada from
esfuerzos provenientes de
LACTLD, will
distintos
speak of
sectores y
other
actores en
initiatives
pos de la inclusión digital. Así que
with
Ignacio,
the
por
focus
favor,
on digital
coméntanos un poco al
inclusion.
respecto.
Ignacio, you have the floor. Thank you, Valeria. Can you see my screen?
Sí, la vemos.
Yes. I will tell you about what we're doing from the logical layer of the internet, particularly through the DNS and the internet domains. I will provide some context. LACTLD is the organization that I represent, and this is the Association of Internet Domain Administrators of Country Code, CCTLD, for Latin American Caribbean region. These are all the members of our association. Basically, the mission agreed on for the CCTLDs or the NICs, the NICs in the region, as some of them called in the region, is to guarantee stability, resilience, and solidity of the top-level domains that they have to manage, and so and in general the domain names of the system to operate TLDs with technical skills to maintain a clear, fair, and objective policy for registering domains, and in general to defend the development of healthy internet. Our association has a multi-stakeholder composition. This is quite interesting. You can see in this pie chart the different members depending on the sector. We have 48.3% from the academia, the private sector 13.8%, government 24.1%, and civil society is operated by 13.8% of the CCTLDs, or the country domains. Let me tell you about some of the projects we have. This is another vision of what inclusive internet is about. Although different standpoints were already described and more about connectivity, but I'm going to speak about online presence. This is so that this is more accessible to all and also more inclusive. We have different projects. For example, NIC Argentina is providing capacities to access the internet. Well, during the pandemic, Argentina analyzed the new registries, and they saw that many of the domains were not operational. They had not been delegated, and a large number of these people were people who had registered a domain for the first time. So they focused on developing capacity building to train these people. These are virtual and free training activities in order to explain what they have to do once the domain has been registered, how to be positioned in the browsers, e-commerce, digital marketing, and cybersecurity. In addition to that, they are part of a program called SME Digital Assistance, together with a hosting enterprise chamber and Cabase. They're providing hosting services, design of websites of up to 5 pages, email security services, CCTLD, integration with digital collection, Mercado Pago, and WhatsApp. All this is provided free of charge for 6 months, or at least until the confinement imposed by the Argentine government finishes. This has been of great help for the MSMEs who have been forced to go over to the online world. So this is a very important effort. As regards NIC Brazil, they already had an initiative called Internet Segura BR, that is the link. They saw the new reality and started considering about new uses that old users could make during the pandemic, work from home, and many other modalities. So they prepared a series of documents focused on that target, for example, rumors and fake news, two-step verification, protection of mobile devices, malicious codes. And this adds on to the work they have already been carried out, mostly addressed at different types of public, such as children, adolescents, teachers, and the elderly. In the case of NIC Mexico had joined 2 initiatives. One is called Le Atiendo por Internet. This is to promote MSMEs and how they can promote sales through e-commerce. This was done through free coaching and support on issues such as logistics, digital marketing, and so on. We work on a multi-stakeholder concept together with the Secretariat for Economy, the Internet Association of Mexico, and other agencies. Then another initiative is Mayo con Causa. This is a online commercial center that brings together a directory of different businesses and shops with full data on their location and services. Each business registers and publishes their catalog of products. This was also done with a multi-sectoral approach coordinated by e-leaders and supported by different organizations. In the case of Ecuador, Ecuador had been considering something, but it coincided with the pandemic. They launched then this project, My Digital Business, Mi Negocio Digital. In Ecuador, Ecuador already had some projects, such as issues regarding building an internet website, but they detected some difficulties in the countries for setting up a website. So based on that, they decided to offer more wider services to include website generation for businesses based on a simple form with queries for those hiring this. So they allowed in this way to have many businesses to go online. It's not necessary to have technical knowledge for those who hire these services. The plans are quite cheap. They include domains, website, and emails. In the case of svnet.sv in El Salvador, they are part of Ticongle. This is a comprehensive program so that young people in vulnerability conditions from the educational working standpoint can have opportunities to improve their social and economic conditions. So they do training for young people in technical and digital areas. They also receive training in soft skills, emotional development, English language, and other issues that will allow them to start working and manage their incomes. This has been very successful. About 50% have joined this. They work with SVNet, ATC Group, and many other organizations have worked on this, including ISOC. In the case of LACTLD, we have Anycast, the cloud Anycast, so that internet can be inclusive. It has to be stable, safe, resilient throughout the region. Countries cannot run the risk of the domains stopping operations. So our members have been developing a regional program which is collaborative and non-profit. It is a unique project in the world. Its features are really unique. It hasn't been replicated yet. There is an idea of replicating this inspired on the LACTLD concept, but this project allows all CCTLDs of the region, whether members or not, and I would like to invite anyone those of you who are not members to join us. This allows these CCTLDs to have access to this service, which provides stability, safety, and resilience. It is managed by NIC Brazil, NIC Chile, and LACNIC. It already has 9 nodes. 6 are in the region. 1 also is United States, and 2 nodes are in Europe. And the good news is that it has just been acknowledged with the FRIDA Award for the category Stability and Safety of the Internet. So that is what I wanted to share with you, and that is all. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, Ignacio. These are very interesting initiatives of the community in the region. In recent years, strong stress has been placed on innovative issues for using the radioelectric spectrum and allowing those to get connected who are not connected. Marta Suárez, who's the chair the dynamic
para que nos
spectrum
ofrezca un
lens
panorama de los cambios regulatorios
will tell us
significativos que
about
se han implementado en la
significant
región
changes
para acercar a
implemented in the
poblaciones
region
remotas a los
to
espacios y a las
come
tecnologías
closer
digitales.
to
Así que
remote
Marta,
communities and to bring them
bienvenida
closer
y por
to
favor
the
coméntanos la
these
experiencia
digital
desde DSA.
technologies. So Marta, welcome. Tell us about your experience.
Hello, Valeria. Well, my greetings to all of you. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be now with all of you. And even more after having listened to all of the panelists in this and the previous sessions. And I'd just like to mention an approach. I think that we all understand that it is absolutely key to have a greater access, not because of the access per se, but for all because of all its implications that provide digital inclusion. And speaking of access, we have understood that today there's a big divide. I'm not in Bogota in Colombia. I'm in the northern region in the country, and I find what about half the Earth's people see that there's not enough broadband. The mobile networks are not 4G. So I need to use commercial services provided by small companies that usually we call ISPs, and these companies, well, the only alternative for providing services through the non-licensed spectrum. And I'm saying this because during the pandemic, this was a reality for people, and it is what we see day in and day out in Latin America. And here I want to give the message of the DSA. We promote more people, to have more people connected, and we believe that one way we can do it is to remove the barriers to have access to the radioelectric spectrum. Lilian told us about the community networks project. Since in 2017, they got a permit to deploy the network. This takes time. In most countries, there are no mechanisms apart from the non-licensed spectrum to enable an opening, so that more companies may offer internet services. And it goes without saying that in most cases, not even the communities can do it. So what I want to share with you today is some comments as to the potential impact of removing barriers. First of all, accepting a reality, and that is that with business as usual, it's not enough with the current situation, despite the big efforts of the satellite companies, etc., and the mobiles, it's not enough. So we could stay with the status quo, but we know where that leads us to. Speaking of alternatives, we have two options. One is the non-licensed spectrum, and the other is sharing spectrum. As to the non-unlicensed spectrum, when it's shared, that is, that in only one band, there should be not just unlicensed, but licensed together with licensed. So the unlicensed, we've for many years, we haven't had an additional spectrum for Wi-Fi. And they should consider that needed. We believe that 6 gigahertz is a great opportunity because it gives us a robust Wi-Fi networks. The secret is very simple: more spectrum, more transmission rates, and better transmissions. For many people, the first access and their only access to the internet is through Wi-Fi networks, so they have to be robust and they need to support those traffic rates, not just including the households. So that's the first thing. So, and that's what we include with under Wi-Fi 6. The second is the shared spectrum. Those are schemes maintaining the users of the spectrum, but when the spectrum is not being used, we can have an efficient usage. and that is usually through databases. When I speak with governments and I speak of databases, they are worried. They think it's very complicated. But I'm going to, when we're speaking of names, domain names, when we started with telephone calls, it was all done by hand. And then now you call and you get connected. That's something that is already available in technology, and in that regard, there are different possibilities with bands that give a great coverage. We can use the television spectrum that is idle, and there are also other options in medium bands where you can share it with the traditional, with the bands that are traditionally for mobiles in the places with no deployment or with a range of users. And in closing, because I think that I have no more time, in the US, the problem is not just connectivity in the United States. Sometimes developed industrialized countries, in the United States, there's a mechanism that's called CBRS that enables you to share layers. There was a last auction of the spectrum because there are some users with a license, some go to auction, and there are others that can access freely. The auction was just closed. It's the first auction in the United States with so many participants. It's quite impressive. There were over 228 participants in the auction. So that leads me to my last message. The market is no longer composed of 3 or 4 companies with all the responsibility of connecting people. The market can be much broader. There can be many more players interested in connecting, not at a global level, but at a small level. But today, the hurdle is access to spectrum. And so the dynamic use is an option that I hope regulators may consider. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Marta. Sin duda,
Thanks a
soluciones
lot,
viables y
Marta. There's no
aplicables que
doubt
ya
those
están dando
are feasible
resultados en algunos
solutions that
países
are
que espero que
already
inspiren
successful,
desarrollos
proven to be
regulatorios
successful
en
in
otros
some
lares aquí en
countries.
nuestra región.
And we hope
Bueno,
that
con
inspires
Marta
our
terminamos el
regulatory
panel.
agencies.
Gracias por
So
todas las
she was the
intervenciones.
last
Quisiera
speaker.
chequear con
I
Israel
thank
si es
everybody
que
for
tenemos
helping us.
preguntas
And
de la
I want to
audiencia.
check with Israel. There are questions, right? Hello, Valeria. As a matter of fact, during the session, we received a couple of questions. One for Lilian Chamorro that she answered in writing, and the other one for Ignacio Estrada, who also answered in writing. Well, thank you, because that saves time. So invite all the participants to please go through the chat.
La discusión con las inquietudes y las respuestas de nuestros panelistas.
So
Bueno, yo les quiero agradecer nuevamente. Quiero destacar algunas ideas centrales que han surgido en los dos segmentos de la sesión. Es claro que la exclusión digital que existía en el marco de los modelos económicos y regulatorios actuales y en el contexto de pandemia se ha profundizado aún más como efecto de la crisis sanitaria que estamos
as a result of the health crisis that we're going through. The interventions in the 2 segments of the sessions have pointed out that inequalities and divides have increased with small gaps. Now we are faced to one of the worst crises in the last 100 years. And a very important thing is that all the interventions of all the sectors and actors have been very important, but it's not enough, and we need to expand the approach so that beyond the access, that is of course the point of departure, as Adriana said, as well as other speakers, digital inclusion implies much more, meeting the needs, the structural and social needs, and considering the conditions of the people. We have to look at it through different angles, including the regulatory issues, the market issues, the public policy, the
collaboration among multi-stakeholder strategies for investment, legal uncertainties, funding mechanisms, etc. People pointed out that we need frameworks and complementary and alternative solutions to change things at level of service delivery, providing, and the cost, the quality of connectivity, as well as the capacities to make them for leverage of the opportunities. In a few words, I think that in both sessions, we pointed out that the region needs holistic approaches to meet and to solve the local problems that is preventing the local societies to benefit from the digital possibilities. And we have to make progress there so that the digital technologies may improve the quality of life of people and reinforce a broad spectrum range of services so that people may have full life. I think that now we have some hints for future work. I hope that the panel was inspiring to you so that we can move forward. So thank you, Israel, for your questions, and I wanted to thank all the members of the panel because we wouldn't have been able to discuss this topic so seriously without your assistance. Now I give the floor to Claudia, who will continue with the agenda. Thank you, Valeria. We thank the participants of this session. We'll now have a long 48 minutes and we'll resume with Internet and Pandemic, Opportunities and Impacts on Human Rights of the Technologies Deployed. At 5 UTC, we'll resume. Please be there on time.